All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to make a quick video here on market making. I see that there's a lot of information lacking online, so I'm going to make it very concise and empirical, so to speak. So, whenever you go search on the internet about market making, you see that market makers, they make money on spread, they make money on, anything like they always say, how to market make. And whenever you type this thing, they're going to say, well, the market makers are individuals or firms that quote the bid and quote the ask, and they make money on the bid and the ask, and they have the inventory, they analyze the order flow. They make everything complex to understand a simple thing. So before reaching this part here, where you're effectively sharing, actually trading the bid and the ask spread, we must understand how it started initially, right? Because you understand how simple it was, so you can start in baby steps since the beginning. So we have what is called the Dojima Rice Exchange. We started in Japan, if I'm not mistaken, Osaka, right? In it's almost one 700s, right? Anyway, 1700. So anyway, it started in Osaka, Japan. So the Dojima Rice Exchange was one of the places that Japanese used to go there and trade rice, and it was one of the first places to organize futures contracts, as you can see here. At the same time, rice was and remains a staple of Japanese diet, creating an abundance of demand for the commodity. The Japanese merchants began organizing future contracts. So this was actually the first exchange in the world to start future contracts. And what you need to understand is that future contracts, it was used for hedging, right? So let's say you are a rice farmer and you knew that the price of rice was at the top or a really good price, and you know that in some few months you're going to have some rice to sell. So what you could do is put some collateral there and short the futures contracts because you would deliver the rice later on once you have it, right? So this was used for this case, and it was in the first place that created the futures contracts. Now, if you think about this, how were the market makers working at the time? Do you think that they had the available market making model, or that they had computers to offer the best bid and ask spread? These guys barely had charts. Let's be honest here. These guys barely had charts. Candlesticks were invented, right? What is the name of the guy who invented candlestick? Was invented by a guy, I mean, allegedly invented by this guy here on 8th century, 18th century. Like there was almost 100 years before candlesticks were invented. Of course, they were already charting price, and you can see here that it was in trading rice futures in the Dojima Rice Exchange. So you can see that barely there were charts. Of course, people charted at the time, but they didn't have the Avellaneda market making model or anything at the time, right? So why does people make it complex? Because people think that in order to market make, they necessarily need to go there and try to replicate this model, which is a very old school model invented in 2008, right? Which is the Avellaneda market making model. Dude, you don't even need to understand this thing over here in order to become a market maker. This is overly complex. You need to start from the beginning, right? So at the time, they didn't have market makers, right? And at the time, it was the beginning of the arbitrage too. Arbitrage, flag waving, Dojima. Dojima, Rice Exchange, Arbitrage, flags. Okay, flag waving communication in Japan. Now, why am I showing you this? Because market making and arbitrage, they walk together in some sense, right? First, you need the market maker, of course, and then you need the arbitrageur to keep the prices stable. Sometimes people mix the arbitrageur with the market maker, which is what the Avellaneda market making model does, right? You don't need to do that. So anyway, if you look here, you scroll down right here, and you see this small picture here of the guy sending a message through flag waving. And the reason why they did is because between different exchanges, places to trade rice in Japan at the time, there was mispricing, right? So the rice is trading at a given price in Dojima, and it was trading at a different price in another place. You don't even need to know the places, right? So what they used to do at the time was using courier services, but it was low, right? So then telescopes was introduced to Japan in the early 16, 1600s. And then flag communication came with it. Now, this was their way of communicating the price between different exchanges, right? Why am I telling you this? Because this way you could keep the price stable between different ports or exchanges. And who would do this? The arbitrageurs would do this. But who was on the other side of the arbitrageur? You could have the farmer or the guy that is going to buy the food there if he needs to, or you could have the market maker. Now the market maker, of course, at the time they didn't have a market making model, but they did need to market make. They would take the spread. Let's buy rice at 10 and sell the rice at 11 to the next guy that comes in because everybody needs rice, right? They need to eat. So this is where the market maker comes along. And you don't need to be overly complex. Recently, in DeFi, it was invented the Uniswap V2. Actually, it's not a Uniswap, it's kind of like Bancor, but anyway, the concept product market making model, right? The concept product market making model is basically a formula that returns for every given price how much you should have in your inventory. Let's put in other words. At any given price, suppose you have, okay, let's compare to the Dojima Rice Exchange here. At any given rice price, how much rice and let's put in dollars just for comparison, how much rice and dollars should you be holding at a given rice price, right? Right? So to speak. So this is how it works. This is the concept product market making model, right? This chart here is showing to you that at any given price, you could offer a bid and an ask, right? You could offer a market making service for rice exchange. This is how it works. Now, instead of going to overly complex things like a validated market making model, you have to understand this thing, the most basic type of market making model. No wonder why many of these altcoins started with this, right? If you look here, all these coins here with huge volume, they are all working on V2 models, maybe V3, V4, but the formula is almost the same. So if this model over here is able to create all these markets, right? It's able to create all these markets in Ethereum to provide liquidity in all these markets, you don't need to be overly advanced in order to understand market making. You just need to find a model or a formula or a calculation for yourself where it makes sense for you to take the bid and the ask spread here in order to have some profits. This is how it is. And I'll give you an example right now, which is the performance of the simple market making model that I have. Actually, it's not that simple, but it does the job. But, well, I said enough, and I hope you could understand it. Have a good one. See you.